Okay, I asked Jerry to spend a few minutes with us. We're going to talk through the gifts and passions test. If you've been in 24 to double for a while or you're brand new, one of your biggest questions about this whole training is how do we transition people out of rows and into volunteers and small groups and those kind of things? Well, the gifts and passions test is the way that we do that. It's actually brilliant. Jerry and Lance came up with this methodology as a way to make sure that we're putting the right people in the right seats on the bus, to use a Jim Collins phrase. This thing works excellent. The pastors that are using it are getting tons of mileage out of it. So we're going to go through here and answer the most common questions. And so with that, Jerry, let's dive right in. And when is the best time to give the gifts and passions test?
All right, so the pastor's breakfast is the best time. Now, I believe in casting multiple nets. And so occasionally I'll gift test my whole congregation on a Sunday just to stir interest and just to get them to see how valuable and important this is. But the truth is you can't really track that well, and you can't work with that number at one time very well. So you need to set up a pastor's breakfast. The best time is Sunday morning. Either if you have multiple services, you might do it between service, but usually before church. And you want to do the pastor's breakfast and gift test people right then and there on Sunday morning.
Yeah, and we always tell pastors that this test is a catalyst to get people to take action. So for some of you, it may make sense to test a big group of people, but a lot of times you want to move people incrementally as you have roles and responsibilities that are available for them. Jerry, this second question is kind of elementary, but we get this all of the time. And it's, what should we serve at the pastor's breakfast?
Yeah, that's a good question. You want to, as often as you can, great leaders pass decision-making authority down the chain. That's really important. So as often as you can. Now, you guys are asking us this, and you're a great leader. You're leading a church, and you're asking this question. So it's an important question for the people who are serving that breakfast, too. So pass it on down to them. Within reason, let them serve whatever they want to. Now, if they're spending $10 a head, you need to step in. But if they just are passionate about it, they want to get out there and make homemade biscuits and gravy, and I'm a boy from the South. You're talking my language. I'll come visit. But if they want to do pastries or something light, it really, the breakfast doesn't matter as much as it's an excuse to get them there. So pass that down. Let the team that handles that ministry decide what to do. We've done it. We were at one time, we were in such a small building, we had to rent the banquet room of a nice breakfast restaurant across the street. So we just used they had a breakfast buffet, so it was incredible one time. And then the other times we had our own space, we just did the sort of continental style. So you can do it whatever way fits your community.
Yeah, and hear him say this pastor, if you don't take anything away from this training, this is where you flex that delegation muscle, right? So maybe you just give them a budget and say, get after it, and resist the urge to take it over. This next question is, I'll answer this one too, because I know where this is. Are there job descriptions for each of the 5 ministry leaders? There are job descriptions. They are under modules 2 and I think modules 3 in the 24 to double content. There's a massive amount of information on that. Now, with that being said, I want to say this. One of the best things that you can do through this process, again, flex that delegation muscle. As you begin to develop your teams, make sure that your team is diving in and they're outlining the responsibilities that need to be taken care of. And at North Point, what they do is they have everybody write a 1-sentence job description. And that's really important because people know, if I don't do anything else, I got to get this part done. And with volunteer ministry, that's incredibly important, but letting them know. There are job descriptions on there. There's no way in the world that we could anticipate every single job that your church is going to have, because you're going to have things that are unique to you. So everything we've got is under module 2, and there's quite a bit of information. Jared, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that was just right. I agree.
Okay. Next question. How do you handle a person who tests high in more than one area on the gifts and passions test?
All right. So this is kind of a twofold answer. A person might test high because they didn't test correctly. All right. And, nobody wants to mark on a scale of 0 to 5. I enjoy Bible reading. They're not going to put a 0 on there and turn that into their pastor. All right. So sometimes they get sort of a well-rounded test result. And if you get a well-rounded test result, there's about a 95% chance that's a faulty test. You need people to answer as close to the margins, a 0 or a 5. Just don't put two or three. Try to get them to say entirely yes or entirely no, and that way you get a better, more honest answer. All right. Then, if you get people who test very high in administration and in teaching, that's not uncommon, or in mercy and in prophecy, then what you want to lean to then is two things. Number one, their area of passion, and when you see what area they're passionate about, ask them where they would like to serve in that area. So if they're very high in prophecy, well, that denotes a prayer leader. But they might also be very high in mercy, and that might denote a shepherd or a recruiter. So ask them, where they are more passionate about, and put them in that area. Know this also, that a person's gifts don't necessarily change over the years, but one might emerge more strong in one season of life and then roll backwards as another one emerges in the next season of life. So test them regularly. And, variety is the spice of life. People get burned out of doing the same thing. So we try to test every year and let people sort of reevaluate where they're serving on the team.
Yeah, that's big. When placing folks in the leadership matrix, which, Pastor, if you don't know what that is, you will when you dive into the training in Module 2, which is where this video is. But when placing folks in the leadership matrix, if I have a leader already in place, does that person by default get the apostle, admin, team leader position? And I think what this question is asking is, I've got a leader on a team, we give tested them, and they register high. I think that's what they're asking. I don't know I think another variation of that question that has come in is, what if I've got a leader on the team and when somebody else comes in, they actually test higher than that person? But let's just assume that the question, this gets asked a lot, by the way, is if they're on the team, do they by default get that apostle, admin, team leader position?
Yeah, so the cool thing about this is you should always put everybody in a position temporarily. Always do that. Hey, we're learning. We're doing some new things here, and I really think you could help me in the short haul just handle this position. That gives you a natural out. So when you find out that they're not great at it or they're not faithful to it, you can come to them and say, hey, thanks so much. You got us through to this point. I think we're ready to reassign you. Let's talk about what you might do next. So if you've set it up that way, and then the next person comes in who you really find should be over that team, well, then now you've got a natural way to make that transition happen. If, on the other hand, the person that you set up temporarily turns out to be awesome, then you walk up to them and say, man, I knew you had some gifts, but wow, you have just blown us all away. We want you to just lock into this role. How do you feel about it? Would you like to just lock in, give us a 1-year commitment? And then that other person kind of serves under them, as an assistant or as a helper. Because a lot of people are going to show up in their top 3 as a helper, gifts of helps and services. So you can always put someone who is admin number 1 and helps and service number 2. You can put them as sort of a helper to the admin leader.
Hey,
so those are some good.
You said something there that's worth expanding on. So you get them to make a 1-year commitment?
Yeah, we ask people to just sign in for 1 year. And reevaluate it at the end of the year. That way it's a lot easier for people to commit. And it also gives us a lot less of uncertainty. We know what we've got for the next year. Because, if they've been in church very long, here's the way they normally do it. You get saved, and while you're still praying and crying, they recruit you to be the 2-year-old nursery leader. And you're doing 2-year-old nursery on your 25th wedding anniversary, and you're like, what happened? So a lot of people are slow to volunteer because they've seen that kind of a culture. And 24 to Double helps you reestablish a better culture where people are serving because they get to, not because they have to.
Man, and I tell you too, if you're watching this and you don't understand the value of saying, this is the analogy that I would give you. If you told somebody to take off running, just say, take off running as fast as you can go. I'll tell you when to stop. They're not going to go that hard. But if you say, I want you to run 100 yards as fast as you can, they know what they can output for 100 yards. And having an end date, even if it's, hey, we really want you to go through that. And if they're in the right spot, they're going to be doing what God's calling them to do. But to have that end in mind, it makes it manageable. Leading a high school small group at my church, it's a 4-year commitment, which that's a big deal. but everybody kind of has the mentality of, hey, I committed to this for 4 years, and you can kind of see a break coming. So I think that's a huge, don't miss that, Pastor, as you're going through this process. What if, as new folks come in, no one meets the gifts and passions inventory placement for a particular role? Does the team leader by default fill that role? This is what happens when you build a plane in flight. We'd love for this thing to have really straight lines and not be messy, but it's going to be messy. So dive in on that, Jerry.
Well, the short answer is yes. The team leader needs to understand all the gifts, all the responsibilities, all the roles, and he needs to fill that role. Now, if you're a good leader and you got an admin gift, you're going to look over at your prophetically gifted person who's your prayer leader, and you might even say, hey, we don't have anybody to be a recruiter, but you've got a lot of energy and a lot of passion. I can fill that role, but you could fill it better. So would you mind taking on 2 roles while we look for the next person? Well, that's but it's a team leader's responsibility. So it might not be wise for the team leader to be let's say, for instance, the shepherd. Team leaders tend to be not good shepherds. So while you're looking for that person who has the gift of encouragement, the team leader might ask the trainer to be the encourager or the shepherd. But it's the team leader's responsibility to make sure each role is filled.
Yeah, that's good. The next question is kind of like a transition question or a part 2 of that question. And I think the question would be, how do I integrate the fivefold ministry model into our current team structure?
Yeah. Well, you absolutely should. Please don't blow up and throw away what you've got, because you might be frustrated with your ministry. I give an example. It's recently we had a holiday weekend. I was speaking on giving. The attendance was kind of down. It was really, really rainy. So it was kind of a somber mood, and I just did not feel good about the weekend at all. And then I met a guy in the lobby who had not been in church in 11 years. And he made a decision to follow Christ that day. And I just thought to myself, even when I don't think it went great, God's still doing something. And I only say that to you, Pastor, to say that if your current model, we're changing it because it's not all that effective, there's still somebody who got touched in that model. Mm-hmm. They still, that your team members, they served and they joined and they volunteered to serve because something touched their life. So don't just crumble that up and throw it away. Even if you weren't the pastor that recruited them, they believe in that model in some way. So be delicate, take your time, and sort of don't merge the two together. We're coming to the 24 to double model 100%, but slowly bring what you have onto that model and overlay those positions into our fivefold model.
Yeah, it's the cruise ship versus the speedboat analogy
Yes.
that you use so often. This is inevitably going to happen. And how do you handle somebody as you're giving these tests out when somebody scores really high in leadership? How do you engage that person, Jerry?
Well, if they are a true quality leader, then I knew it before they filled out the paperwork. The paperwork was kind of an encouragement for them and kind of drew my eye to them if I wasn't already knowing them. So if they score high in leadership, then they're in a very small percentage, 5 to 10%, people who are truly strong in the gift of administration or the ruling gift. So I want to put them in the right seat. I want to make sure they're serving in an area of passion, but I'm also going to start working on them immediately, because people who have a really strong gift like that, they're judgmental. Mm-hmm. They get frustrated really easy. They nitpick everything to death. And someone with a really, really strong gift can destroy a team faster than anything. It's like a stick of dynamite. If that dynamite is used in the right way, boy, it's awfully beneficial. But if it's used in the wrong way, it'll kill you. And that's what a strong leader is. I know that because I was one of those sticks of dynamite that blew a few things up before I got straightened out. So I guess I answer that question a little bit differently because it's kind of personal to me. But those people with really strong leadership gifts are diamonds in the rough. And you want to handle them with care and put them in the right position. But be honest with them. Be honest with them. You want to affirm them and tell them that, hey, you're in the minority and you're special and we need you. But be honest and say, hey, if you don't learn how to control your weaknesses. And by the way, our team, our training for each gift will help you with that. We've got that on the website. But be honest with them and say, here are your potential weaknesses. And your weaknesses, a person who has the mercy gift, their potential weakness is they don't follow through. Okay, we figure that out. But a leader's potential weakness is destructive. All right. So you have to be really careful. When Abraham had an amazing gift of leadership. When he was disobedient to God, he created a whole race of Ishmaelites. Think about that. Person who has great strengths, they also have really powerful weaknesses. And when Abraham did the right thing, he created Isaac and the nation of Israel. When he did the wrong thing, he created the nation of Islam. All right, just think about that for a minute. So every person who has a type A strong leadership gift, you need to treat them very delicately and mentor them personally.
Hey, Jerry, thanks for doing this and being with us today.
Absolutely. Good to see you guys.